Welcome to the Midlife Fulfilled Podcast. Are you over 40 and ready to truly thrive? Well, on this podcast, we go deep on ways to thrive across the 5 pillars of midlife: health, fitness, career, relationships, and legacy. I'm Bernie Borges, midlife advocate, life coach, and your host. Subscribe now and get ready to thrive. Donna Wallace, welcome to the Midlife Fulfilled Podcast, a vulnerable conversations episode.
Thanks so much, Bernie. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here for this conversation. Donna, first of all, you are one day ahead of me. Here I am on a Thursday evening in Florida, and it's Friday morning for you down under. So I always get a little chuckle out of that just because of the whole time difference, and you're literally in tomorrow. But I've been looking forward to our conversation because you have an approach to life and you have an approach to helping people, serving people through your business that is very soul deep. In fact, Donna, you call it Soulradiance. So I want to read something you have on your website, and then I'm going to invite you to have a deep conversation, a vulnerable conversation with me about it. You say on your website that Soulradiance is a deep dive healing course to unleash the light of your soul and have you feel happy, loved up, lit up, and free, and awaken your soul. So I want to know, how did you get there? How did you get to this point where you are serving others around this?
That is such a big question, Bernie. This is a midlife podcast. I'm in my midlife, and that would entail me telling you like my whole life story. But I can give you a sort of short version if you'd
Sure.
like.
Just want to provide context for this whole conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So I did not grow up in a spiritual or religious household. And it was when I was a teenager, I was introduced to Reiki for the first time. I was upset, and a family friend said, "Donna, come over here if you'd like. I placed my hands on your shoulders and give you Reiki," which I didn't even know what that was at that point in time. But when she did, it felt like this beautiful, warm energy moving into my body, and I felt calm immediately. And I was so curious about what that was. A real sense of like comfort and calm, like peace, the energy of peace and curiosity opened up inside of me from that. And I needed to know more. And that really set me on a trajectory of like self-discovery, and also opening up the realms to like what else is possible, and of course the healing arts. But that evolved over decades, Bernie.
Sure.
Decades. And
Right.
so I studied that. I became a Reiki practitioner, and I studied so many different modalities over my life. Um, and I had another job for most of that time, or for like at least 2 decades over that time. And I always was doing my healing work on the side as not a side hustle, but as a hobby, as something that I felt was like really meaningful and fulfilling. And I absolutely loved doing that for people, and people got beautiful results from it as well. But I never quite could figure out how to turn that passion into like a viable career financially, from a financial perspective, of being able to support my family. Um, and it, and so I had my son, who's now 12, and then I had my daughter. And when my daughter was born, so she's nearly 9. When my daughter was born, I had this real, like this, almost this light bulb moment of, if I don't pursue this now, I'm never going to do it. And coupled with a feeling, Bernie, of I feel like my daughter is asking me to be all that I can possibly be. So I wanted my kids to grow up knowing that they can fulfill their dreams, like absolutely knowing it without a shadow of a doubt in their mind. Like I didn't want to just be the mother that said to them, you can do or be anything that you want to. I wanted them to see that this is normal and this is natural, and you can pursue your dreams and you can have a life that you where you're fulfilled and happy in your work, in your career, or even let's call it a vacation. And that's just their normal, that's their baseline. And so interestingly, I started my business when I was completely sleep deprived with my daughter, and I ended up going back to my corporate job for a little while, after she was born, and then my business took off. I was working at nights and also not sleeping at night with her, and, it was I was really sleep deprived, but I was also deeply fulfilled, Bernie, and
Okay. So part of your story is fairly common theme here on the Midlife Fulfilled podcast, and that's oftentimes hearing a story of someone sort of waking up one day, whether it's literally one day or over some period of time, and having this awakening, this self-awareness that, you really want to pursue something. And whether it's, I have to do it now or I'll never do it, as you said, or it's just time. The time is now.
Mhm.
Part of what I heard you say is that having your second child, your daughter specifically, was really motivating. And you even said it's as if she was calling you to do it. So that's very inspiring. And again, it's a similar theme that we discuss here on the Midlife Fulfill podcast. Where I want to go in our conversation is I want to unpack the meaning of healing. When you work with someone,
Right.
what does healing mean?
Thank you for asking that question, Bernie, because I don't have a better word for it, and so I use the word healing. To me, healing is a process where we start to resolve trauma that people have gone through. We start to resolve issues that you've experienced in the past that have led you to a place where you're not your fullest, most vibrant, most happiest, most calmest, best version of yourself, basically. So, in my mind, we have everything inside of us that we need already. You're not broken, and you're not, incomplete. Actually, you're complete. There's everything that you need inside of you. Ultimately, you are a radiant being of light, I believe, or an expression of the divine expression of love. You have everything inside of you that you already need, and your fullest version of you exists inside of you. I feel like what happens is over the course of our lives, we experience different things and we start to shut down parts of ourselves, or we start to, not believe that everything is possible or available to us. So we start to become a little bit less optimistic and a little bit more pessimistic, really. And so to me, healing is resolving some of the things that we've experienced and we've gone through so we can open up your natural state of radiance, your natural state of love, and not be like so affected by the things that you've experienced in the past. Or and it can be both. That it can be past trauma issues that you've experienced. It could be a family trauma that you've kind of inherited somehow. It also can be like the exposure to our culture, to marketing. It can be, the environments that we grow up in or the societies that we grow up into that, actually don't feel in alignment with us. So to me, healing is kind of getting rid of everything that's in the way of you being your beautiful, radiant self that you already are. It's just sort of covered on top of, there's some layers on top, but it's also so it's a process of becoming who you are, but it's not like having to go anywhere or get to a place. It's really an internal unlayering,
Internal.
if you know what I mean.
Okay. You used the word divine earlier in
Mhm.
your explanation. And I
Mhm.
want to disclose something to our listener, Donna, and that is that you and I had a conversation about a week ago, give or take, maybe 2 weeks. I at least lose track of time to kind of get to know each other a little bit because we had not met before. And I shared with you kind of my perspective. You said also in your introduction that you didn't grow up in a religious home, and I didn't either. But in my recent decades, speaking of decades, I have adopted, as you know, a faith that is Bible based. And I want to ask you, if someone comes to you and wants to explore working with you, or they know they want to work with you, and they read to you this one scripture that I found that I thought could be relevant for our conversation, I'm going to read it. It's from the book of Philippians, which is in the New Testament. It's chapter 4, verse 6. And it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." So if I came to you saying, I like what I see on your website, but I'm a Bible believing person of faith, how does that integrate with how you help people?
To me, it is a different it's a framework, and that framework is your connection with God, or it's your connection with source. And I believe that we can all exist with different, frameworks, if you like, and still have a connection with God, or still have a connection with source. So do I think that that means that if you're religious, you can't come and work with me? No, I don't think that at all. I think that we are all ultimately wanting the same thing. So
And that
do
same
you have
thing
a
that we all want is,
specific
do I have
is
a
what?
specific what? Go ahead.
A further question around that?
Oh, well, yeah. So we all want the same thing. How do you characterize what it is that we all want?
We all want I believe we all want to experience what pure love is, what true unconditional love is. I think ultimately that's what we all really want. You could frame that in other ways. Maybe you could say we all want to experience heaven on earth, or we all want to experience what bliss is, but I think ultimately what it comes down to is love. We all want to experience what it feels like to be unconditionally loved, and we also want to experience ourselves as beings who are loving unconditionally.
I would agree with that. And those of us that are Bible believing people of faith know that really God is love. I mean, if you were to sum up God in one word, it's love. So God loves everyone and invites everyone to love him. I also know, because I've come across people in my travels, I don't mean travels literally, but in my life, who can experience the love of God but still feel a void, still feel like they're struggling with whether it's human love, whatever it may be. So maybe that's a scenario where you, with your skills and your background, provide healing for people, regardless of whether they're someone like me, a Bible believing person of faith, or an atheist, or whatever their framework is or isn't. It, I get the impression from this conversation, as well as our previous conversation, that you have a framework that is agnostic to religious convictions and doctrine, and helps people in their quote unquote healing through the process that you take them through.
Right? Yes, you're absolutely right, Bernie. To me, I feel like you can you can be all of you. You can come to me and you can be all of you. If you are someone who believes in the Bible, I love and respect and honor that. You can come to me and be however you are and bring your beliefs in, and then also still receive healing. And actually, I think what that healing does is open up that connection with your faith more.
Yeah. Back to what I was saying a moment ago, I'm going to reframe what I said, because what I've encountered from a few people is this notion of, so we're Bible believing people of faith. I know that God loves me, but what I've heard people say is, I don't deserve for God to love me. That's a
That is
pretty,
such a huge thing, Bernie.
isn't it?
I mean, I would say that most people that come to me would have a version of that, which is that they don't feel like they're worthy of love, or they are unlovable to some degree. And well, I've got goosebumps as you talk about that and all the feels, because to me, that is an expression of our lack of self-esteem. Like a feeling of whether you're deserving or of love and how lovable you feel, that is not something that is inherent. Like that is not something that's fixed within you. That's something that happened to you over time that can be resolved. So what if you can have like look at it like that, like it's not fixed. It's not actually a done deal, and it's just something that is sitting within that's kind of blocking that flow of love, then what if that can be healed and resolved? That means that you open up the doors to experiencing the greatest love of your life, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How, I mean, I'm sure there's no one size fits all, but how does that even happen with an individual? Again, there's no one size fits all, so I know that. But as you said, when I gave that example, that's a very deep, it's a very difficult thing that someone might experience. So I'm sure it's not a single conversation that provides the quote unquote healing, right?
Correct.
So how do you approach that when whatever the circumstances, I gave you that circumstance, whatever the circumstances, how do you approach each individual, which is always going to be unique, right? It's always going to be a unique
Yes.
situation, but nonetheless is going to be very, I'll use the word serious for that individual.
Right. Benny, you're so right. It is extremely unique for each person. That even though we're talking about a common theme that maybe many, many, many of us humans are experiencing or have experienced, like it is so deeply unique and personal that how do I do it? I listen. Like I listen so deeply to the people that come to me that I hear their words and then I also hear the unspoken words as well. And I've had enough experience working with thousands of people over the years that I can start to put together the pieces of the puzzle and start to help people unravel like where that stemmed from. So I listen and I am deeply connected and present with the people who come to me. It's a profound experience, Bernie.
You said something profound that I want to come back to, that you listen, but you also listen for the unspoken, I don't know, word or unspoken something. Can
Yes.
you unpack that a little bit?
This is where, to me, when you are deeply present and listening to someone, well, this is what happens for me, Bernie. I can feel and I can sense the gaps in between their words. And so sometimes people will say things and I absolutely get it and acknowledge it. And then I can also feel like what's behind that or what's sitting in between their words. And it's often in that space that isn't verbally articulated. So, not maybe even consciously thought about that. That's where magic often happens. It's almost in that space that you don't know that you don't know, the things that you can't see for yourself. And that's why it's so powerful having someone who can really deeply be present and listen to you because there's insights that sit in the unspoken word and
Yeah.
feeling space.
Yeah. Yeah. How how would you frame up my 5 pillars? I say my 5 pillars as if I own them, but I I talk about the 5 pillars as
Mhm.
the 5 areas, key areas of life that we should focus on, right? And that's health, fitness, career, relationships, and legacy. So when you're working with someone, you're listening, you're providing your service to them, whether it's conscious or unconscious, do you sort of look at their life and work with them in the context? It may not be the same words as the 5 pillars that I'm describing, but do you sort of look at it through that lens or not?
Um, what how I would articulate that, Bernie, is that people come to me in their specific areas of their life that are not in and not the way that they want them. So maybe it's health or maybe it's legacy. I would call that purpose and fulfillment. Maybe it's relationships as well. Like it could definitely people come to me when their work isn't, in alignment with them. For me, the way I see that is actually what is underpinning all of that. What's the thing that would actually move the needle as an internal experience that means that you can go out and get the things that you want? Like you can go out and create the life that you want in all of those 5 pillars. So for me, it's the foundation of what sits underneath that. If someone says that they don't feel deserving or worthy of love, do they also not feel deserving or worthy of having a job that is fulfilling and also, fills their bank accounts? Like, how else does that pervade that person's life? And so I would see that the underpinning foundation of that inner relationship, that the experience of self, then kind of has this ripple effect into all those pillars that you're talking about, Bernie.
Okay. Uh, I'm going to get off topic for just a moment here, but did I just hear some kangaroos in the background? I heard
I
something.
don't probably heard some birds. I have a lot of birds where I live, and no kangaroos right here, but sometimes koalas. There are kangaroos up the road at dusk.
Yeah. I've actually seen some videos on Instagram of people that have kangaroos in Australia, of course, coming right up to their front door. So
Yeah.
I have a feeling they're like
y-
deer. I live in Florida. Deer, there's as many deer as there are people in Florida. But I
Right.
digress. We'll come back. We'll get back. Sorry for the tangent. As I was listening to your last response, Donna, I was wondering the following, and that is in the thousands of people that you've encountered and work with, what are you seeing among different age categories as it relates to people's need for your service to work with you?
I see that as people get towards, I see that as people get towards midlife or moving into that phase, and I heard you talking about that you think that midlife starts in your mid-30s. I agree with that. I think as people are moving towards a milestone of the age of 40, they're already starting to think about what do they want the next half of their life to be. So I feel that this is a really potent time in people's lives because there's often big transitions. People are wanting change or wanting to do something different or want life to look a little bit different than what it has for the first 40 years of their life. And so I think that there's a great need for this kind of work at this stage because how do you create something different in your life when you feel the same way? Like what do you do differently? Like you can take some different actions, but can you without that internal work? I'm not sure. Because often you'll end up like moving back into old ways, moving back into what's familiar. I don't know if I articulated that very well, Bernie.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. Um, in your experience working with people, do you find that people are searching for themselves or searching for something higher? Whether you want to use the word divine, spiritual, God, people use the word universe all the time, right? Are people searching to find themselves or are they looking to find something bigger?
Do you know, I think they're looking for both, but what they say they're looking for is they just want to feel happier. Or they want a change, they want their work to be better, like, they want to be doing work that's different, or that they wanna find a loving relationship and find themselves in the same kind of patterns in relationships that are not healthy for them. So people come to me saying, like, the specific things in their life that they want that is changed, and what do they get out of that? They get a deeper sense of connection or understanding of their self, but they also get a connection with what I call the divine and you call God. So
O-
underpinning all of that is that's actually what they get. They get both. They get feeling happy within themselves and they get, they figure out how to be different in relationships and all of those things. They get the things that they come for, but they also get so much more. And isn't your question really like, yes, we have our unique expression as individuals, but ultimately we are an expression of the divine. We're ultimately an expression of God.
Well, I couldn't have said that better. I couldn't
Yeah.
have said that any better. That you actually took the words right out of my mouth, Donna. That's exactly what I was going to say. We were created in God's image. It's written in the Bible that way. So whether you believe that or not, that's the way it's written. And so I agree. I agree. I'm also wondering if you have ever discussed the distinction between happiness and fulfillment, because you've said a few times that people ultimately want to be happy. And I'm one that actually challenges that a little bit. Not that people want to be happy. I don't challenge that. But my challenge is just knowing what happiness is, because happiness is an emotion. And we can be happy
Happiness
for
is an
some period of
emotion.
time and then become unhappy. Not necessarily permanently, but we can just be a yo-yo, up and down, up and up, up and down with happiness. Whereas
Agree.
fulfillment is achieving something, and we can have many, many achievements in life that give us that sense of fulfillment. And what I say, Donna, is that fulfillment is immutable. If I achieve something and I have fulfillment from that, it's immutable. It's permanent. You can't take it away from me. Do you discuss that distinction with people?
I have a slightly different take on that, Bernie. I never used to speak about happiness, and I used to speak about joy because I felt like joy is something that can stay with you, like a deep inner joy that can stay with you. But now I talk a lot more about happiness because I believe we can actually increase our baseline level of happiness in our day-to-day life. And so, yes, it's an emotion that we will come and it will go, but also we can have like overall more happiness in our life. And so that's something that really I've only uncovered for myself over the last year or so, to be honest, maybe
Mm,
two. Um, Fulfillment to me is I think you can get fulfillment in two ways. I think that you can experience it as an energy, as in an emotion. And I think that you can start to develop fulfillment before you've actually done the thing that you want to do. I also believe that you can get fulfillment from doing the things that you want to as well. So, and yes, that level of fulfillment, once you get it, it stays with you, absolutely. So I've had both, Bernie. I've changed my life. I've created this beautiful business where I feel like I'm making a contribution to people and I've got a deep level of fulfillment from that. Absolutely. I also feel that when you don't have something in your life yet and you want to experience something, you can start to tap into what fulfillment feels like before it actually arrives.
okay. Okay. So that's fair. That's fair. Let me give you my explanation of how I look at fulfillment.
I
I
love
also
these conversations, Bernie, with you. I love our healthy discussions.
I also believe that there's two types of fulfillment. One
Yeah,
is something that you achieve. So speaking in the first person, if I achieve something, then that gives me fulfillment. This podcast is an example of this, of
yeah,
fulfillment. By recording and publishing this podcast and having wonderful conversations with beautiful people like you that bring something meaningful and insightful to whoever is listening, that's fulfilling for me. But I'm creating that achievement, therefore I'm creating that fulfillment very intentionally,
absolutely.
and that's very fulfilling. The other
Yes.
type of fulfillment is fulfillment that's bestowed upon me. I didn't create it, it's bestowed upon me, and I accept it, and it's very fulfilling. A great example that is very fulfilling for me is both of my kids are married. My daughter's married to a guy named James, awesome guy. My son is married to a woman, Nicole, terrific lady. Their marriages, the families that they're building are beautiful. We love them. You know, it's so fulfilling to see my kids married, having wonderful lives. But though those they chose their spouse, right? I had zero involvement in that. Trust me, zero. Um, but it was bestowed upon me. And that's a fulfillment that, again, it's immutable. But in that example, it's bestowed upon me. So you see the difference? One is I created it because I wanted to. It's an achievement. It's intentional. The other is it's been bestowed upon me.
Mm, mhm. Yeah, interestingly, I don't know if I would call that fulfillment, that second example, and I absolutely get it for you, and not invalidating what you're saying because that's so beautiful, and I love that you've got that and that you get to share in their joy and, the creation of the building of your family and everything. I'm just not sure if I would have described that as fulfillment for myself. I would call that, like, pride and love and contentment perhaps and deep joy. But I'm not sure that if I would have described that as fulfillment, but I love considering it like that. I'm open to it.
Yeah, I think
Mm,
the reason that I personally view it as fulfillment is because it is something that nobody can take away from me. It is very deep. It's so level deep. It is so gratifying to me. And it is an achievement, even though I didn't achieve it myself, because like I said, I didn't select their spouses. But nonetheless, it's something that is very, very deeply gratifying to me
mm,
and gives me a tremendous sense of fulfillment because I had some contribution to it by being their father. And of course, my wife is their mother, right? So, together we had some contribution in the way that they were raised and some contribution into the adults that they've become. And so it is fulfilling to see them just living, to your point, joyful lives. It's not like I'm not going to use the word joy. I think it's a wonderful word that can be part of what we're discussing here for sure. But for me, it is a sense of fulfillment. Is it joyful as well? Absolutely. And I'm not saying that it's one and not the other. It's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it is fulfilling and absolutely there's joy in it.
mm. I love that, Bernie. Do you feel like fulfillment is something that, as the word would suggest, fills you up?
Yes. Yes. Not always the same though.
Hmm.
Not always the same. Fulfillment can be a small level of fulfillment or it could be gigantic. It all depends. I would think that the work that you're doing is gigantic fulfillment for you.
It is,
Um,
yeah.
you might plant something in the backyard, a certain
Did you
vegetable.
have a look in my backyard? Because we
Well,
have just been clearing it out yesterday for
okay, no,
replanting.
I'm being totally spontaneous. So if you plant something in your backyard and it grows nicely, that's fulfilling. Is
Yeah,
that same fulfillment level? Is that the same fulfillment level as what you're doing in your business and helping people? I'm not going to answer that for you, but I'm just saying, you can answer that, right? Like there's different levels of fulfillment, is all I'm saying.
I agree. And I also think, Bernie, that we are wired to find fulfillment in different ways. And that is tapping into our natural strengths and gifts and how we're meant to contribute in the world. So I believe like that I'm meant to be doing what I'm doing. And the reason why it feels so good to me, it feels so I feel like, the divine or God is really intelligent because they've wired me in a way that makes it feel so good for me to be doing this work in the world that I will keep doing it. And so I feel like we're wired to have our gifts and our talents expressed in a certain way, and the benefit that we get is fulfillment from that. And so it's just this beautiful, intelligent, divine orchestration or, implementation in our systems to wire us in a particular way, to give us that level of fulfillment when we're on purpose and we're doing the work that we're meant to be doing in the world.
Goodness, I think that's a great place to wrap the conversation, Donna. I think that's just beautifully and well said. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we go, please share with the listener, someone wants to connect with you and just get into your world. How can they find you and connect with you?
Thanks, Bernie. You can find me on my website, which is donnawallace.com.au, or you can find me on Instagram, which is Donna Wallace Healer. And Wallace is spelled Wallace, because I know you can spell that differently. donnawallace.com.au or Donna Wallace Healer.
And
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Bernie. I've loved our conversations and the openness and respect that we can have different frameworks and different beliefs, but yet be on the same page.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Donna. I really appreciate you joining me for this conversation. And I look forward to staying in touch and learning more about your continued journey.
Thanks, Bernie.